and welcome to this special interview of Al24 News on the sidelines of the high-level forum for the promotion of intra-African trade and investments as a preparation for the intra-African trade fair to be held in Algiers in 4 September to 10 September 2025. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by Madam Kanayo Awani, Vice President of Afreximbank. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. To begin with, let's start with the big picture. What is the overall vision between or behind this intra-African trade fair, and why is it important and crucial to prioritize intra-African trade nowadays?
Well, first of all, starting from the second question, it is important to prioritize intra-African trade. It was important previously, even in 1963, when the Organization of African Unity, at their first meeting in 1963, decided to prioritize intra-African trade fairs. You may or may not know this. Algeria hosted the second of that event in 1976. The first one was in 1972 in Nairobi. It is all leading to, they had at that time, we had gotten our political independence, but it was important to focus on economic independence, and then the real freedom will occur. So this is nothing new. But coming 2013, yet again, the AU also decided to prioritize African continental free trade. Well, they prioritized a blueprint, a framework for Africa's socioeconomic development. They called Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. In that prioritization, they prioritized the AfCFTA, one common market. How do you have one common market? Because you want Africans to trade with each other. That's what it means. You want to remove barriers to trading with each other. But how can you have that when people don't know what their neighbors are producing? When people don't know what markets there are? When people don't know which partners to deal with in those countries? And there are a number of problems or issues that are inhibiting, or what will I consider obstacles inhibiting intra-African trade, and why it is stubbornly low at 15%. Some people say it's infrastructure deficits. But today, the same infrastructure carries about 85% of trade. The same infrastructure, but externally. We determined that one of the critical issues was lack of access to trade and market information, as I mentioned. That our people don't know that they can buy fertilizer from East Africa, from Algeria, for instance, rather than go to faraway lands, or rather than Algeria exporting, and in fact, exporting to the Americas. It's information. So what does the trade fair do? It brings buyers, it brings sellers, it brings investors, it brings investment opportunities. It actually brings in the public and private sector under one roof so that people can see what Africa is producing, what Africa is consuming, and be able to make a trade decision, and we have the exchange that we desire. It is very important at this time than ever before. Just think about what's happening in the world today. Think about the geopolitics. Think about the emerging wars that have actually become actual wars. There's no better time for Africans to look inwards. There's never a better time for Africa first. There's never a better time to trade with ourselves. That's how we build sufficiency, resilience, and grow our economies.
Mm-hmm. So that is the vision of the intra-African trade fair.
It's a key instrument to the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. The AfCFTA prioritizes intra-African trade and expansion of value chains, of course.
So they are closely linked, the IATF and the AfCFTA. So the IATF will help accelerate the implementation of the African Trade Continental Free Area?
Absolutely, because we're trying to promote trade and investment between African countries. That's what the AfCFTA, in simple terms, is hoping to do, grow intra-African trade.
And so how do you evaluate how have trade dynamics evolved in recent years? What is your take on that from your experience?
Again, as I mentioned, the dynamics of trade today, if you think about the United States of America, is to look inwards. But I think that the AFCFTA gives us one common market, a market, of about 1.4 billion people or 1.5 billion people, combined GDP of about 3.5 trillion US dollars. I think it's an impactful market. And if we begin to look inwards, and that's the whole essence of the AFCFTA, and by extension, intra-African trade. And we can see improvements, by the way, over the years based on what's going on. Because as African countries are prioritizing industrialization, we're dealing with issues around supply side constraints that we had. Remember, traditionally, by virtue of our colonial legacy, we only exported commodities and minerals in their raw form. What it then meant when you export in your raw form is that you cannot export the same commodity, you cannot trade with each other because there are no industrial value chains. You cannot sell raw commodities to yourselves. You have to sell them to markets where they can add value. And the sad fact of that phenomenon is that when we sell them in their raw forms, or even some of them are not even raw materials for anything, we're exporting the jobs to the industrial cities and economies, and then we re-import the finished products. That's an anomaly. And those are the legacies of our past that banks like Afreximbank, working together with the AFCFTA Secretariat, working together with the AU Commission, are looking to reverse. It is not acceptable. So, people say Africans produce what they don't consume. That is so true. We produce cocoa beans, but we don't consume cocoa beans. Or that we consume what we don't produce. That means we produce chocolate, but we don't produce chocolate. We have to be able to produce and consume, what we produce at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the Algiers Roadshow is in its 4th edition. What makes this 4th edition special? This year's Algiers Roadshow, what makes it significant for you?
Well, this roadshow is significant in the sense that the roadshow is happening in the host country. It is significant because Algiers, as the host city of the intra-African Trade Fair, the 4th edition, is hosting the roadshow. We must do the roadshow here because it's important that Algerians benefit from the intra-African Trade Fair itself. So this roadshow is about galvanizing, sensitizing the Algerian community, the business community, public and private sector about what is coming, and to prepare them, ensure that they are, to serve as a catalyst to get them prepared to participate in the trade fair. They are the biggest beneficiaries of the intra-African Trade Fair. That's our experience with host countries. So it's, like I said, it's basically to sensitize them to come, to bring their businesses, to bring their small and medium-sized businesses, to bring their women businesses, to bring their youth-led businesses, to bring the parastatals, to bring their business associations, to bring their members, financial institutions, the entire business community that will benefit from the various verticals of the trade fair. Because the trade fair is not just an exhibition, right? It is actually a trade engine, and it has several verticals, right? It is an exhibition, yes, in different sectors, but it's also a conference. It is also a forum for trade and investment, to discuss issues around the AFCFTA, to discuss issues around how we can trade better with each other, how we can be competitive within Africa and globally.
Markets, yeah.
It is also a B2B exchange. We are supporting our B2B and B2G, business to business and business to government exchanges. We also have a targeted buyer program, whereby we want buyers who will normally leave the shores of Africa to travel to faraway lands to procure those finished goods I talked about, or even the raw materials for our industries, to come to the trade fair and see where those goods are produced in Africa. It is all of that. Last year, we had the Creative Africa Nexus, where we did a pull-out to focus on the creatives. The creatives will be on the center stage again this year in music, fashion, arts, sports, gastronomy, literature. We also have a research and innovation hub targeting the academia, universities, and innovators. We have the African Sub-Sovereigns Network, where we are also trying to see how African sub-sovereigns, not the nationals, bodies, but the sub-sovereigns can begin to exchange trade and investment information, but also educational exchange, cultural exchange, as the case may be. There's the auto forum as well. So the automotive also gets a better spotlight because we find that you can't talk about industrialization and ignore the auto sector based on our research.
Mm-hmm. So maybe speaking about the choice of Algeria, what made Algeria a strong candidate to host the 4th edition of the intra-African Trade Fair?
Well, they put in, aside from the fact that Algeria put in a strong bid to host it, mm-hmm. They did put in a strong bid.
Infrastructure.
They put in a strong bid. Mm-hmm. When you request for proposals, they put in a very strong bid. But they also showed a lot of commitments, especially political commitments. Mm-hmm. And when we came here to do our due diligence, the infrastructure was adequate. One of the things we find in hosting intra-African trade is that a lot of countries do not have the necessary infrastructure for a trade fair like this scale. What it showed us at the time when we did our due diligence, Algeria has always been prepared for trade fairs. I mentioned that in 1976, they were held the second All Africa Trade Fair. So they've always been in that, position, well situated, well positioned to hold trade fairs, as you probably may know. What also importantly was that Algeria has also showed very strong presence in the previous trade fairs. In the other editions. But overall, they put in a strong bid. We've seen a lot of commitment from the high level. Commitment
from the authorities.
We've seen it, and we saw it manifest when we held the Kanayo weekend, which mm-hmm. was some sort of a dry run for this one.
A dry run for this IITF.
Yes.
Now, maybe we can talk about the fact that the preparations are underway. It's just in 2 months, a couple of weeks. Can you tell us and share some details about the preparations underway?
Yes, the preparations are going on strongly, and that's why one of them is holding the series of roadshows. The series of roadshows we've held is to see that the key markets are sensitized, mm-hmm. So that everybody wins. Africa, and the message is that Africa must begin to trade with itself. So we've had those roadshows. We've seen an impressive number of participants register. Mm-hmm. There are probably about 40 countries in the reckoning, African countries, aside of those outside of the continent that are, in some phase or the other, looking to take on pavilions here, as well as other large corporates from other African countries. Mm-hmm. So I think they're going well. We are doing a lot of sensitization now. We are giving it our last gasp. We just did a site visit also to see that the venue is in the shape in which we want it to be. We'll be back again very soon as we ramp up or as we draw near to the trade fair itself. Mm-hmm.
Maybe some last words about the terms of scope and ambition and expected impact of this 4th edition that is supposed to be or expected to be the biggest edition ever so far.
Yeah. We're expecting at least 2,000 exhibitors, at least. Mm-hmm. Here. And we, as I mentioned before, at least 40 African countries, 40. At least 40 African countries will be represented here. We're also expecting visitors, both physical and virtual, within the neighborhood of about 35,000 at least, 35,000 visitors. We're also expecting other countries from non-African countries. Uh-huh. We've seen non-African countries like Switzerland, Greece, Jordan, quite a few of them have signed up to participate in the trade fair. It's fast becoming, if it is not already, I think it is the biggest platform of trade fair on this continent today. It is the biggest platform for public-private sector dialogue, very important for the implementation of the AfCFTA. It is, and I do believe that it will probably be the best and biggest ever,
edition.
Yes.
Maybe to wrap up, what is your message to the African continent ahead of this major continental gathering in Algiers this September? And maybe last words for our audience who may want to take part of this very significant economic event.
My message to people listening to me, Africans, is that it's an opportunity not to miss. Yes. And that we cannot, we need to take seriously, the economic and environmental dynamics of the world today. Africa has to be looking inwards. Yes. It is Africa for Africans, no choice.
It is Africa for Africans. Thank you so much for your valuable insights.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you, dear viewers, for your kind attention. Meet you in other interviews.